Hello and welcome back to the channel. I'm extremely excited to get into today's video. I'm going to be talking about the draft covers that I made for my book, Ruins of a Fantasy, the Trident Tournament. If this is the first time you're hearing about it, then congratulations. I will now trap you until your ears bleed. No, I'm just kidding. But Ruins of a Fantasy, or Ruins for short, is a young adult fantasy about an anxious boy named Dorian who discovers that he's a prince of a kingdom named Trident that has been in a decade-long war, and it's up to him to end the war and save his people. That's kind of the blurb of it, if you will. There's a lot of elemental blending, folklore, mythology, LGBT characters, and the world is heavily inspired by Mesoamerican and Mexican culture. But these covers will only be talking about the first book in the series, the Trident Tournament, which is going to be professionally reviewed by an editor. So I do need help covering the costs, and if you would like to help me, then in the description I am selling art at my shop. There is a bunch of designs from the Ruins series and the world, so you can get a little glimpse of the characters and some of the designs and see if you like anything. There's also some other just fun stickers for everyday things and other aesthetics and other characters from different stories as well. If you don't find anything, you can also reach out to me for a commission. I will also link Google Doc where you can enter your information and contact me, and I can draw stuff for you. This story means a whole lot to me. It means everything. This is like the #1 story, and I want to give it the best shot it can. And this book is the kickoff to the entire series, which is a lot to ask of it. The first book has to really pull a reader into the world and prep them for the overall story, but not be too overwhelming. And when you're traditionally publishing, like I want to do, you can't actually say that it's a series because people really don't like series. After the craze a few years back with the Hunger Games and Divergent, the industry isn't very keen on publishing series anymore. So it has to be able to stand on its own 2 feet in case the rest don't get published. But don't worry, if that does happen, Ruins will be published because I will self-publish the rest of them. There is no way that I would let this story die. It is literally my pride and joy. So, for the first cover, what I wanted to focus on was obviously the Trident, but also Dorian, because we see the world and the story told entirely through his point of view. I was taking that kind of literally with this one, but mostly because this is the first time that Dorian learns the truth. Everything that he knew before in his previous life is now completely irrelevant. Dorian is seeing everything for the first time right alongside the reader. I find it rather insane that I have yet to talk about Ruins like officially on the channel because I've been building this story for years. It started as a comic, then it was an animation, and now it's a book, so it's gone through quite a crazy journey. The Trident Tournament is broken up into 2 parts, the first being Dorian's entrance into the world and the second being the actual tournament. So through this book we get to explore 2 kingdoms. The Trident, which is the kingdom that Dorian hails from, and the second the kingdom of Lucamerena, which is where the merfolk live. The people of Lucamerena worship the goddess Agora, which is the same goddess that blessed Dorian, and Dorian acts as kind of like the bridge between the land and the sea. And I wanted to show that connection by having the kingdom be overlaid on his chest. However, despite the connection, one of the main conflicts of the book is the merfolk rejecting him. One of their core beliefs is strength of pretty much all kinds, and while Dorian is a soccer player, he's not really the strongest person. He's not very physically strong, and he's also very in touch with his emotions, but not necessarily in the healthiest way. The kid's kind of all over the place, very self-doubting, so there's a lot of sort of hesitation in accepting him. So that was kind of the first inspiration for the cover, leaning a bit more into the emotional side of it while having a connection with the water and details like that. On to cover 2. For this one I wanted to hold the weight of Dorian being the claimed savior of the lands. The boy is 13, so throughout his whole life he was alone and suddenly he needs to save the whole world. It's kind of a lot to put on him. One of the main themes of the story that I've always tried to stick to was Dorian's reluctancy to actually participate in the war. I got tired of seeing stories where the main character was fully excited to take on these massive responsibilities, because to me it didn't seem realistic and borderline heartless at some points to just not pay attention to how much their actions would affect other people's lives. And thus Dorian kind of embodies that. He really pays attention to the reality and the guilt that weighs really heavily on this kid. It's not all loom and gloom though. Dorian is an anxious overthinker, but we do get to meet other characters who kind of change things around. It's Nolan. Oh my god, I love Nolan. This boy is like the definition of a shining light, and I love him so much. He's so much fun. Dorian needs fun in his life. So for this cover, I wanted to focus more on the water part of the story, and we get like a close-up of the castle, which I designed almost 4 to 5 years now, which is kind of crazy to think about. And at the time, I wanted it to look like a clamshell because I was thinking of expensive things that come from the ocean, and that was the first thing I thought of, like a pearl. I don't really know how well it holds up to what Luca Moreno looks like now, but these aren't the final designs anyway. I still do like it. I was following a lot of restrictions back then that I don't super agree with anymore. When I was first designing the castle, I wanted to stick more closer to what a general audience is familiar with, and in hindsight that's a little dumb, but younger me was trying to play it safe, and the me that drew this cover was too lazy to design a new one, and I also just really wanted to pay homage to the comics because those actually got put up on the internet. And while it may not be a comic anymore and things have changed, I still think it's cool to leave little Easter eggs and details to kind of honor how long it's taken and how much the story has changed and kind of the journey that it's been through. I also really don't like Dorian's face in this design. It was one of the reasons why this was not my final choice out of all the designs I did. At the time, I was doing a lot of different drawings for Dorian and from all different points of the story, so this is a little too old for how Dorian actually is in the book. He looks about 15-ish in here, but in the first book he's 13, and he just doesn't have the baby face in this one. So, and the expression he's making is dumb. Like what are you doing with your mouth? What are you doing? But that's my fault. Side profiles are hard, specifically the lips. I am making everyone look like a fish, and while Dorian may be part fish, it's not like that. Another reason is the water. You would think with Dorian having water powers that I would be better at drawing it, and you would be wrong. One thing that I do like about this design is you do get to see Dorian's birthmark. Like 90% of all drawings I have of him, you don't actually get to see it, but it is there, and I love it. And it's a very small detail, but it is important to me. I will forever say that I am Ruin's #1 fan, and I am very lucky to be so, because I get free content. I am going to be real. I tried out colored lines for a few of these designs, and disgusting. I think I ruined a few of them, and I don't know if it's just me. I think I just don't fully understand how to utilize colored lines yet. I've struggled so much to learn how to use them effectively. Like, the brown for Dorian wasn't so bad. It made the hair look worse, but the skin is nice. So I don't know why I used blue for the green sea parts of the castle. That was just poor planning on my part. I don't know what I was thinking. To be fair, I'm a big fan of the ocean, so half the time I'm just battling the urge to go, ocean. I think overall this image was just a bit too monotone for anything to really effectively stand out. Even though Dorian is technically on the opposite side of the color wheel, he's also very desaturated. I think that's kind of my calling card for art. I've kind of noticed. I've been trying to work on it, but it's still getting there. I was still learning how to render while I was making these covers, so they're not as good as they could be, and that's okay. I really loved making them, and it was fun to play with all the different designs and trying to find out what I really wanted for the cover. Now that's all to say that I really have no control over the final cover because I am hoping to go in the traditional publishing route. So with this book, there's really no way for me to fully control how it will look, but I'm sure I will get some say, and these are just kind of fun ideas for me to play with in the meantime. Which brings me to my next cover. And one of my biggest pet peeves that I will talk about in this section, which is Mexican media and how Mexican-centered stories are usually focused on the Day of the Dead. And not every story follows this, but if you can think of like the most popular Mexican-centered movies in like the last decade, which ones are you going to think of? I can most guarantee you it's going to be like The Book of Life or Coco. Both of those which involve Dia de los Muertos. And while it is important, it's not everything. The whole point of Ruins was to have an expansion and diversity that is worldwide, and fully inspired by Mayan, Aztec, and just Mexican folklore, from clothing to cultural practices, food, mythology, folklore. Ruins has a lot. And I think one of the funny things for me about Ruins is that I wanted to have gods included in the story. And originally there was only one, but then I had to expand the world and expand the story, and I didn't want to piss off any real gods, so I made my own specifically to avoid offending anyone, which I might still be doing, but at least it won't be directly tied to my bloodline. One thing that I really like about the book covers, or really just any kind of design, is silhouettes. So I really wanted to kind of focus on that for this design, and use that the tail shape as my main focal point, while the rest was just smaller details. The middle will change. I just kind of wanted to keep that part a little bit simpler than it is right now. And the top, I wanted to have each fin hold the different kingdoms and have Dorian kind of walk down the middle path, like if the scales were a street, and it kind of visually representing Dorian entering this journey, very Wizard of Oz-esque. That was kind of the intention, at least. I don't think it went very well, even in just the sketch, so it doesn't really stick. This was my inspiration photo for it. I did pick it because the flowers in the photo stood out to me a lot, and I really wanted to include that as well. One of the names that Dorian's mother calls him is Lotus, and it's a flower that grows on water. But there are also some other implications that I won't reveal now, but the name is important to Dorian, and like I said, I've been trying to play with this duality of Dorian and the story itself, balancing this like land and sea vibe, but I couldn't really get the lily pads to look quite right, so I kind of scrapped that and then went for a totally different look. Some of my favorite things about my culture is the artistry and clothing and just decorations. So we have a lot of bright colors and patterns that are really cool, and I wanted to use that for this design as well. So I was focusing on smaller details and trying to keep the main big focal point to be the tail. And I wanted a really simpler design because everything else was really intricate, and I just wanted to have something a little bit more simple, just to test out, just to see. These were all just kind of for fun. I will say that this is probably one of my favorite ones. It's nice to look at. I'm not fully happy with how it looks. The decorations around the tail came out exactly how I wanted to, but I don't think the rendering of the tail itself was very good. Like the kingdoms were not very solid. I think with some tweaking it could be cool. Maybe be like a special edition of the book if I ever do use this, but in the end was not the final look. So now that I've showed you all the failed options and the ones that I didn't quite go for one reason or another, now you get to see the final cover and the one that I like the most. So going straight into this, I wanted to throw the kingdoms just fully out of the picture and focus solely on Dorian and his internal conflicts. There's this burden that was placed on him, and he just has to deal with it, and so I wanted to draw an interpretation of Agora, the goddess who blessed him. And she has many forms, and this is just one of the many, and I just wanted the focus to be on the Trident and Dorian and that side of the story. So I included the Trident itself and Dorian reaching out to grab it. I really wish that I had pushed the pose more. He just looks so lackluster, like, barely grabbing it. The pose could have been pushed so much more for sure, and I think I was just having trouble fitting it all in like one page, but I should have extended the arm fully, and instead of just having it bend, it doesn't fit the feel that I needed it. But that's something to note for if this was the final design. This is one of the very first times that I ever used the symmetry tool also. I almost never use this tool for like anything, but it worked for this one, so that was really nice. Using that versus the hand-drawn whole thing, it kind of draws the eye away from the jellyfish being the focus, and there's nothing interesting that draws your eyes, so you kind of focus more on Dorian. That being said, I did want to have a pop of color for Agora, so I went through a few different options trying to find out what I liked via Pinterest color palettes, because color is not my strong suit. I've said this before, and I'll say it again. I do try, but sometimes it just doesn't compute with my tiny peanut brain. I do try, but something about it just doesn't compute with my tiny peanut brain. Somebody's gotta jackhammer smash that information through my thick line weight skull, slap some duct tape on there, call it a day. I don't know. but I still wanted the main focus to be in that middle and where the Trident is, so it all kind of leads to that one focal point, because Dorian isn't actually the focal point. The Trident is, because it's the Trident tournament, so you know, I kind of had to. I did like how this one turns out. I did have a lot of trouble with rendering. Like I said, these were done while I was still trying to figure out how to actually render, which is kind of cool, because if you don't know, process isn't always a straight line. In fact, it rarely is. Here's kind of a chart that explains it. Basically, as artists or creators, we have passions for things and generally have a taste for what looks good and what doesn't look good, even if it's just like personal taste. Really, anyone can have it, but for creatives, it's what gives us our passion, our inspiration, and our motivation to create things. Couple that with our actual abilities and our confidence, and these two don't always match up. So this phase is, with the book covers, was definitely my confidence overhyping myself, and my skills just had to go into hyperdrive to try to keep up with my ideas. But this is a good thing, even though it can be really frustrating, because it pushes yourself and you will get progress. Sometimes you literally just have to say, fuck it, we ball, and jump in head first before we even know what you're doing. Get that good hands-on life experience. And this one in particular, I learned a lot about layering different layers and how to properly use them. The multiply and scream tool have been real good friends of mine since then. I use them for everything now. And while there are still improvements that I have to be made, I think it's really cool to look back at my art and pinpoint which drawings really contributed to my skills growing, and I think that this cover was for sure one of them. So those are my covers for the first Ruins book, The Trident Tournament. And I actually just talked with an editor earlier this week. I actually did get a price for what the editing is. This is just going to be the first developmental round of editing, so it's the first professional round, and it's going to be $1,215. So that's quite a bit. And as I mentioned in my other video, I'm not currently working right now, so this shop is kind of the only way I have to make money at the moment, and commissions. So I would really appreciate it if you could stop by the store, at least take a look. I have prints and stickers. A lot of them are related to Ruins, and it will go directly into funding the publication of the book. Ruins means a lot to me, and I will be talking more about it on the channel. So thank you so much for watching this video, and I hope I didn't talk your ear off too much. I tried to keep it as spoiler free. I might have been a little bit repetitive, and I was trying to actually talk about techniques this time, so let me know if you want more of that. Like, comment, subscribe, do all the things. Buy some art in the link in the description. Commission me if you would like, if you want to actually see this book get made. But thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. Even if you do nothing else than just watch, it does mean a lot to me still. So thank you, and take care of yourself. Stretch, drink some water, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!